some very interesting studies on people who have lived to be 100. And so obviously we're all interested in what is it about people who live to be 100 and beyond that's different than people who die in their 70s or 80s. And it turns out it's not what we'd expect. It's not if they followed the vegetarian diet. It's not that they smoked or never smoked in their life. It's not if they drink a glass of wine or teetotalers. It turns out that there's a psychological characteristic that seemed to be common in all these people, which is an internal flexibility, which meant that they were able to embrace whatever was happening in their life fully and then move on. You know, when you live to be 100, life is not going to be easy. Almost every one of these people lost significant people in their lives, often children, let alone spouses and friends and compatriots. But what they all said is they just embraced it. They went through the process, they felt their grief, and then they had something to look forward to, and they digested it. And so it seems as if that ability to stay flexible is a key component of reversing the aging process. It's something that we can all learn from.
The 8th step is flexibility. We already talked about flexibility in our physical bodies. As our bodies grow old, they become rigid. So it's important to keep them flexible through exercise and yoga and mind-body coordination. But even more important is the flexibility of the mind. The flexibility of the mind says that when things don't seem to go my way, I let go. I let go of my idea of how they should be, trusting that I don't understand the big picture. And if I did understand the big picture, it's all right. This too shall pass. Have that attitude. There are many studies that show as people grow older, if they have the ability to let go, that flexibility in consciousness translates into a biological response of flexibility in biology. The ability to let go is a wonderful ability that shows a healthy consciousness. And flexibility in consciousness translates into flexibility in biology. There's a phrase in Ayurveda, the science of life, which says, infinite flexibility is the secret of immortality. You know, when you go to a forest, you see trees, and the trees that are flexible and bend with the wind, they survive. The tall, big, proud oak that is rigid is the first one to crack and fall down. So too consciousness and flexibility in consciousness translate that. So always say, when things don't go my way, I let go of my idea of how they should be, trusting that I don't know the big picture. If I knew it, it would be okay. Secondly, let go of resentments and grievances. There's a beautiful prayer in the Course of Miracles which says, every decision I make is a choice between a grievance and a miracle. By letting go of my grievances, I choose miracles. So letting go of grievances is also the act of forgiveness. Right now, come on, let's close our eyes and think of somebody that we're having a resentment with. Recall them in your awareness. And even as you see their image, say, I let go of all my resentments and grievances against you, because by doing that, I will choose a miracle in my life. Practice that on a daily basis, and now you're practicing a very powerful phenomenon. We call it forgiveness. And many studies show that when you're able to forgive others, you can open your eyes and forgive yourself also, then you are a much healthy person. You have more flexibility in consciousness. Don't be rigidly attached to your point of view. To be rigidly attached to your point of view creates rigidity in consciousness, creates rigidity in your body. Of course you have a point of view, but you're not rigidly attached to defending your point of view.
Flexibility ultimately means being open to uncertainty. There's a part of everybody's being, which we could call the ego, which wants to control the situation. The ego is that part that wants to say that this is mine. it's part of our self-image, so this is my clothes, and these are my children, and this is my job, and this is my way of doing things, and this is the way I think things should be. And that part that tries to control the situation gets irritated when the world says that it's not going exactly the way I think it should be. There's this old joke that says, how do you make God laugh? You make a plan. And so if you have a very rigid idea of how things should be, and the world keeps giving you suggestions that maybe it has its own plan, that dissonance between what I think things should be and how they are creates tremendous emotional stress and physical stress, and actually accelerates the aging process. There's another part of our being, this witnessing part of our being, which is really the part of our soul that has a much more easygoing attitude, which is, thy will be done, taking it as it comes, being curious about what the next phase of life is. And if we can bring more of that into our lives, then we kind of flow with the ever-changing world. Like a palm tree at the ocean. If the trees that are rigid are not going to be able to tolerate the changes. Whereas if you can flow with the changes and say, okay, this is the way I'd like it to be, but sometimes the world has its own ideas, and I will also be able to navigate that change, it actually encourages the reversal of aging. I'm reminded of a friend of mine who was a very health-oriented person. He meditated regularly, he ate healthy, he exercised regularly, but at the age of 50, he had a heart attack. Just had some genetic predisposition to it. When he called me from the coronary care unit, I was very surprised. But he seemed to be very happy. I said, I don't understand it. How come you're so happy? He said, I'm happy because this is a new, interesting experience for me. I've got medical students asking me all these questions. I've got nurses taking care of me. And he said, in a lot of ways, life is like a roller coaster. He says, I was recently staying with some friends in Long Island. And they were very wealthy, and they had expensive cars. And one day when I was there, their children wanted to go to Coney Island to ride on the roller coasters. So he said, it was this really interesting experience that we drove in this very expensive Mercedes to Coney Island, and then we paid for the experience of having a really bumpy ride. He says people buy Mercedes because they want a completely smooth ride, but yet they were willing to pay for a really bumpy ride. But why? Because even as you're going through that bumpy ride, you have this sense of, I'm going to be okay. If you really thought you might fall off the tracks, you probably wouldn't enjoy it. But the fact that you actually felt comfortable in your ultimate safety allows you to enjoy the ups and downs of life. For this guy, he had been meditating a long time. He was inherently a flexible person. He said, I'm just going to watch this wave go by. And I'm not going to lose my center just because life has thrown me a curve here. And that's really what flexibility is all about, is having that inner sense of peace and curiosity, even as the world is changing all the time. And that allows us then to ride the waves without drowning in it, ride the roller coaster ride without getting totally anxious. And that state of mind, which actually translates into a flexible physiology, and allows us to enjoy it rather than feeling irritated or upset or anxious every time things don't go exactly the way that we want them to go.
The idea that no matter what situation there is, no matter what problem there is in your life, that there's a creative solution to it. Creativity is a human attribute. It says, I don't care what the problem is, I will reinterpret it as an opportunity, and I'll come up with a creative solution. There are 9 steps to the creative process. The first is you visualize an intended outcome. Know exactly what that intended outcome is. The second step is you gather information. So my intended outcome is to lower my cholesterol level. I visualize that when I'm doing that, I'm going to be healthy, vital, strong, energetic. Imagine what that would be like an experience. Then gather the information that's around that. What are the foods that I must take? What are the foods that I must avoid? Etc., etc. Second step, third, analyze the information as it applies to you, because some people metabolize cholesterol in a different way than others do. In Ayurveda, there's a lot of science on body types and so on. That's the third step. The fourth step is incubation. Meditate. Let go of it. And if you just follow the first 4 steps, which are intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis, incubation, meditation, then the 5th step will happen spontaneously. It's called insight. Aha. And if the insight is true, then you'll be inspired. Nothing will stop you. So insight leads to inspiration. Inspiration leads to implementation. Implementation leads to integration. Integration leads to incarnation, a new experience of life. So those are the 9 steps to creativity. Let me repeat them. Intended outcome, information gathering, information analysis, incubation, insight, inspiration, implementation, integration, and incarnation. If you practice flexibility and creative response, you will see that your biology will start to respond in a completely different way.
We have this aspect of our nature, which we can call the ego or the self-image. It's a way of protecting ourselves. We learned it really young, that if we got good grades in school, or were the fastest runner in our class, or a girl got into a cheerleading group, that she got a lot of reinforcement. And so we translate those early accolades into the sense that if I just accomplish and achieve and acquire, people will like me, I'll be safe, I'll be comfortable. So as adults, we think about, if I have a great job, if I have a powerful position, if I have the right car, if I have the right house, if I have the right body, if I have the right friends, then I'll be okay. And if it gives us some relief from that existential anxiety, then we get attached to it. Everybody's trying to feel comfortable. So for some people, feeling comfortable is wolfing down a couple of martinis. For some people, it's shopping. For some people, it's gambling. For some people, it's working. For some people, it's trying to get a certain number in a bank account. But the problem is that whenever there's something external that we're dependent upon to give us some sense of internal comfort, we actually have a proportionate level of anxiety because we know that it can always be eliminated. So if I'm feeling good because I got a great job, then if I lose that job, I have a proportionate level of panic. If I'm feeling good because my 401k plan is gaining in value, then I feel terrible when the market crashes. If I feel good because of this relationship and the relationship falls apart, I feel bad. So the problem with these attachments to external things is that there's always some vulnerability. And as a result of that sense of vulnerability, we try to control the situation. We become inflexible, we become rigid, and we live in fear of losing control, losing power, losing approval. And so when we're in that attachment, ego-based state of mind, we're almost preparing ourselves perpetually to be offended. We're offended because things are not going the way I think they should go. If we can loosen that attachment and really be more centered in that field of awareness, which is our soul, which is just watching the show go by, knowing that things will come and go, but I'm still going to be here, then we lose that need to hold on so tightly. We lose that fear of losing control, and rather than being perpetually prepared to be offended, we actually increasingly find ourselves preparing ourselves to be amazed or to be amused or to just have fun. And with that comes flexibility. Because, if you say, I want to go to an Italian restaurant and the restaurant's closed, instead of being all upset, you say, oh, look, there's a Chinese restaurant across the street. Let's try that out. And often what happens is you're surprised. It's better than you thought. It turned out to be something new. You got something out of it rather than what was predicted. And so being flexible cultivates that age-reversing mindset. If you look at kids, they're like perpetually amazed. You try to go on a walk with a 3-year-old, you can't get anywhere. There is no goal. You say, we're going to walk down to the mail. It may take you an hour because along the way they're seeing this caterpillar or this butterfly or there's this dog there or there's a bottle cap, because they're just constantly open to being amazed. And not that we're going to be able to have that level of innocence, but just cultivating that sense of being present allows you to accept what life is offering you at that moment. And when it doesn't go the way you want to, instead of creating all that stress, you can actually say, oh, maybe there's something to learn here. Maybe there's some new experience. It expands your flexibility and allows you to enjoy more. And, we believe that enjoyment is one of the most powerful age-reversing experiences that we can have, because the chemistry of enjoyment enhances our immune system, lowers our blood pressure, helps us sleep better at night. So, a controlling, inflexible nature ultimately is the symptom of aging. If you look at older people, the older we get, the less flexible we get. Even physiologically, people's spine becomes less flexible, their blood vessels become less flexible, their ability to adapt to changing environments becomes less flexible. So cultivating flexibility mentally, emotionally, spiritually is a powerful age-reversing technology.
The ninth step is increasing the consciousness of love in our life. Love is the most powerful healing force in the universe. Because love is not a mere sentiment, love is the ultimate truth at the heart of creation. When you feel love in your life, you feel safe. You feel closer to God. You start to heal yourself. You start to heal others. In order to enhance this experience in your life, you have to express your love. You have to be responsive to the gestures of love in your environment. Love goes through 7 stages when it starts to blossom. The first stage is the stage of attraction. The second stage is the stage of one-pointed intention in love. The third stage is communion. The fourth stage is intimacy. The fifth stage is surrender. The sixth stage is passion. And the seventh stage is ecstasy.
In many ways, it's probably more powerful to think about love as a verb than a noun. And so how do we express love? We can express it through what we call the 4 A's. One is through attention. When you give people attention, you're letting your love flow. And the most powerful way to give someone attention is to look them in the eye. Because when you're looking someone in the eye, you're not being distracted by their attachments. You're not looking at their cars or their houses or their clothing. You're just really connecting soul to soul. And when love recognizes itself in another person, then that energy flows and it's very age-reversing. We express love through affection. Affection means we touch each other. And as mammals, touch is age-reversing. There are a number of studies that show that when we touch each other, or even when animals are touched, it produces the chemistry of age reversal. So there's an interesting study from 10 years ago where they took rabbits and they fed them a high cholesterol diet. Both groups of rabbits were fed the same high cholesterol diet. But in one group, the animal keepers were told to take the bunnies out and play with them, touch them, cuddle them, pet them throughout the day. In the other group, the bunnies were left in their cages. And at the end of the study, they found that the bunnies who were treated compassionately, lovingly, had less cholesterol deposits in their blood vessels by almost 10% than the bunnies who were just left in their cages. There's lots of studies showing how affection affects our health and reverses our aging. If you give air traffic controllers a 10-minute shoulder rub, their blood pressures come down. If you take premature babies in a neonatal intensive care unit and massage them, they put on weight 50% faster and are out of the intensive care unit weeks earlier. If you take people who are undergoing cancer treatments and massage them, their immune systems improve and they require less pain medication. So affection is an important way to express love. The third way is through appreciation, which means you tell people and you show people that they add value to their life. So, we tend to take people for granted, and we tend to think that they know that we appreciate them, but actually by talking to people, by telling them, by showing them, it allows love to flow, and it actually reverses the aging process. And the fourth A is acceptance, which means we just accept people for who they are. We don't hold our love out as conditional. And we just shower people with love. And by doing that, people often transform in the ways that allow them to be better able to fulfill our needs. So love is powerful on every level of life, physical, emotional, spiritual, and the more that we're willing to commit our lives to loving consciously, not only will the quantity of our life increase, but the quality of our life will dramatically improve.
We are attracted to those people in our life in whom we see traits that we want in ourselves. So next time you're attracted to someone, ask yourself, what is it in that person that I want, and how can I be like that? If your love is based on need, it's doomed for If your love is based on need, it's doomed to failure at some point. But if your love comes from a state of fullness, if you have the qualities that you're looking for, then your love will lead to playfulness and ultimately will lead to ecstasy. Similarly, if you're turned off by someone, ask yourself, what's it in this person that I'm denying in myself? Because emotionally we are frequently turned off by people in whom we see traits that we deny in ourselves. So if you do that, you'll start to move from the first stage to the second stage of love, where there is immense attention, where there's deep listening. Remember the second stage as 3 A's: attention, affection, appreciation. So when you listen to somebody without interrupting them, you're giving them loving energy. When you appreciate the good things that you notice in them, you're giving them loving energy. And when you're affectionate, even in your body language and through gestures, like being close or giving somebody a hug or giving them a pat of reassurance, that's affection. So remember those 3 words, the 3 A's: attention, appreciation, affection. That moves you to the second stage. The third stage is called communion, where you connect with someone. You connect with someone if you think they're your equal. If you think they're superior or inferior, you won't connect. You connect with someone if you are truthful. There are no secrets. Okay? It's called integrity. And you connect with someone if you have no desire to control them. Equality, sensitivity. Same thing as empathy. Trying to see what the emotion is that the other person is feeling. Equality, empathy, and communication. Honest communication. Truthful communication leads to the third stage of love. The fourth stage is intimacy. Intimacy is when you have nothing to defend, when you have let down all your defenses, when you're willing to expose your vulnerability. And if you have intimacy, that leads to the next stage of love, the fifth stage of love, which is surrender. Surrender means you have no desire to control, insist, beg, seduce, convince, cajole. You just let it be. You accept the person totally as they are, without feeling that you have to change them in some way or another. And if you are in the spirit of surrender, that leads to passion. Passion is the feminine and masculine energies in your own self coming into their full blossoming. The masculine energies are action and initiative. The feminine energies are beauty and intuition and nurturing and affection and tenderness. And if you move from there, finally you come to the stage of ecstasy. The ecstasy is when you have that bubbling energy of healing inside you. You feel physically ecstatic because the world of the senses opens up to you. Every sound is beautiful and has music in it. Every fragrance creates a beautiful experience in your body-mind. Your senses are alive. That's called physical ecstasy. Then there's something called mythical ecstasy. You want to do grand and wondrous things because you're so madly in love. And then there's sacred ecstasy. You get the experience of God. That's what love is. It goes through attraction, one-pointed intention, communion, intimacy, surrender, passion, ecstasy. If you have that experience, your body will stop aging. There's a beautiful poem of Rumi, my favorite poet. He says, "I'm so mad with love that madmen have to say to me, be still."
The less inhibited your heart is with disappointments, resentments, grievances from the past, the more your heart will naturally flow. And when it's flowing in the present. It's not, when you're loving somebody, you're not thinking about the past or the future. You're just being in that present. And that present is actually the most age-reversing place to be in. So, we think that love is important medicine. It may be the most important medicine that we have.
We go to the last, and not necessarily the most important, but equally important step in reversing the aging process. It's a youthful mind. A youthful mind is just, you have to just look at children to see what a youthful mind is. Children never stop asking questions. So don't stop asking the most important questions in your life. Who am I? What's my purpose? How do I serve? What's the meaning of my existence? Here are 7 questions I'll ask you to think of the answers in your mind. The first question is, what did I feel like when I had a peak experience, when I was really happy? Write down 3 or 4 words. The second question is, what's my purpose in life? The third question is, and write down 3 or 4 words. The third question is, what is my contribution to my family, to my society? Write down 3 or 4 words. The fourth question is, who are my heroes and my heroines? Children always have heroes in their imagination, even if it's Superman. But there's a hero there. There's a heroine. There's a mythical being there. So see, who are these people who inspire you? That's the fourth question. The fifth question is, what do I want from my friends? What are the qualities that I most admire in my friends? Write down 3 or 4 qualities. And then 2 or 3 more questions. What are my unique talents? When I'm expressing my unique talents, I feel happy. I lose track of time. As my favorite poet Rumi says, I'm singing my song. And when I sing my song, I don't worry who listens or what they think. And the last 7th question is, what are the qualities that are best expressed in my personal relationships? Write down 3 or 4. And now what you have is your soul profile. And every child comes into this world with that soul profile. If you can be like that child, go back to those most fundamental things, then you're expressing yourself.
One of the features of people who live vibrantly into their 80s, 90s, and beyond is that they see life as a process and an ongoing opportunity for learning. One of the things that I sometimes see in people who are accelerating their aging is that they're carrying a lot of regrets with them. I would have, I should have, I could have done something. And what I often counsel these people is by telling them, hey, if you can't look back on your life and say, if I only knew then what I knew now, I would do things differently, then that means you haven't learned anything. If as a 20-year-old you did everything right, then what's the point of living to be 100? And so the challenge is to look at your life and say, what can I learn today? And keeping your mind active and engaged has been shown actually in good scientific studies to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease, to increase your vitality, to increase your immune function. So we really encourage people to see every day as an opportunity to learn something more about life and to take advantage of all the things that are out there. If you've always wanted to learn how to play the piano, there's no reason, even at age 80, to say, I'm going to start taking piano lessons. You don't have to master it. Just start learning something new. Setting up those new synaptic connections in the brain actually enhances the age-reversing process. If you've always wanted to study Chinese art, start doing it today. So it's our experience that when people engage in that mindset that it's never you're never too old to learn something new, that they're constantly looking for that opportunities to engage in new experiences, that has a tremendously powerful age-reversing impact, not only on their minds but also on their bodies.
Never stop asking questions. That's the first thing of a youthful mind. The second thing is, have a sense of wonder. Children are full of a sense of wonder. The third thing is, play. playfulness is the nature of our life. At the most fundamental levels, look at how playful nature is. Dolphins are dancing on the ocean, and trees are reaching out to the sun, and birds are singing, and flowers are blooming. God created a playful universe. It's gushing with recreational activity. And when we lose sight of the playfulness of our souls and we become very serious, then we become very self-important, and we become very full of self-pity, then we lose touch with reality. Seriousness is a mask of the ego. If you want to touch your spirit, learn to play. Learn to play at all levels. And you will have a youthful mind, and having created that youthful mind, you will also influence the biological markers of aging.
It's our experience that at every age of life, these principles are applicable. And it doesn't matter when you start, because life is this continuous journey, this continuous process. So if we taught our children these principles, they would have much more fulfilling, nourishing, and healthy lives. But it doesn't matter if you're in your 50s, your 70s, or your 90s, that whatever stage of life you are, becoming more awake to the magic and the mystery is going to have a positive effect on your mind, on your emotions, on your body, and on your soul. So absolutely, this is a process that is applicable at every stage of life.
You know, this material that I have given you is from my book, this Grow Younger, Live Longer, the 10 Steps to Reverse Aging. And we came up with this material after a lot of experience with ourselves, with our patients, and with people that we see here at the Chopra Center on a daily basis. Dr. Simon is my colleague, and Dr. Simon is a neurologist and an internist. My field is endocrinology and internal medicine. And through our observations over the years, we developed the material that we have given out to you in this program, the 10 Steps to Reverse Aging, how to grow younger and live longer.
One of my teachers once told me that to have the experience of a human being, to see the world through a human nervous system, is an amazing experience. And if you don't use that experience to really celebrate the mystery and the magic and the sacred aspect of life, then it's like it's like you've traded a diamond for the price of a head of cabbage. So it's our experience that when people really embrace the amazing opportunity of being a person, being a human being, having human mind, human physiology, human emotions, then every moment becomes important. And when you focus on the moment, your body becomes timeless. And so it just takes a shift in awareness to start integrating these principles of grow younger, live longer. You don't have to do everything at once. Just do one thing differently. Take time to practice restful awareness. Start some type of exercise program. Put some attention on eating in a healthier way. Identify toxins in your life and start reversing them. Choose to do something that's going to make you happy. Decide now that you don't want to have any regrets at the end of your life, saying, if I only did this, if I only tried that, I would feel better. Because regret is one of the most age-accelerating components of life. So we think that it's important to live life with joy and celebration and vitality. And these principles that we've outlined are really, in our experience, on a day-to-day basis at the Chopra Center, teaching us that people can change in a moment. You can be in depression, you can have illness, you can have unfulfilling relationships, you can be miserable in your job, and by shifting one aspect of your life, everything else begins to shift. There's a great myth story that I once heard of this man who was tired of his life. He was frustrated with his marriage. He was overwhelmed by his children's needs. He wasn't happy in his work. And so he ran away. And it's a mystical story, so it said that while he was sleeping in the woods, some celestial beings came to him and said, I think it's time for you to be liberated from your human experience. And since you've been a basically good guy, we'll let you go to heaven. So we're going to line up your shoes, and when you come back out of this, you just get into your shoes and you walk and you'll be in heaven. So drifts off. Some other little mischievous gremlins were there, and as soon as he fell back asleep, they pushed his shoes so they were facing in another direction. The guy wakes up. He wasn't sure if this was a dream or not, but he was convinced that maybe something real happened. So he gets in his shoes, he starts walking, and as he's walking, he comes to this clearing, and he sees this house, and he thinks, gosh, this house looks a lot like the house that I used to live in, but it's so much more beautiful than I ever remembered it. And then this woman comes out and says, hey, that woman, she looks a lot like my wife, but she seems so much more loving and beautiful than I ever remember her. And these kids come running out, same thing. So of course nothing changed, just his perception of it changed. And I think ultimately the value of Grow Younger, Live Longer is how do you look at your life in a different way so that you can really embrace it and learn from it and enjoy it. And the consequence of that is you're not just living longer, but you're really living better. And you're getting the full value of what it means to have a human experience so that there's no regrets, there's celebration, and that aspect of your life which says, I love this world, is really what's the predominant component of your experience.
I thank you very much for being here today to listen to this material and giving me the privilege to share it with you. Enjoy it, make a habit of it, practice the 10 steps for 6 weeks till it becomes a habit, and then you won't stop. Firstly, because it'll be a habit. Secondly, because you'll feel so good. Thank you very much.